Hello, 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 hello. Everybody's on mute.
Hello.
Hello.
Nice head guard there, Jerry. Feeling witchy today?
Yeah, my friend makes all these custom hats, and this was my birthday present. And here's what's cool is I can be like a wicked cowgirl.
A wicked cowgirl. Let's see. Let's check that out here. Oh yeah, cool. So it's got like little floral wire or something in it.
Yeah. They make really fancy custom hats, and they brought me one for my birthday.
I
And
love it.
I wanted to get away from the theme of the earlier part of the day.
Yeah, that's a good.
You know,
I love how your AI is giving me instructions during. It's like, no, if I wanted to do that, I would do it. No, that's all right, Jerry. You're on mute again for whatever reason.
yeah, I forgot to shut that off. Sorry, just reject it.
Yeah, I did. I said no. Thank you for suggesting it. So, I was talking to somebody the other day, and I don't think that they realize that AI is taking over everything that they do. So, if you be very careful about what you accept on your, like when they update things, because it sometimes will take you by surprise. Say, I didn't know they were chasing that down. So I am doing captions. I will be doing transcripts also. Welcome, everybody. Let me share my screen. And please, just if you've got questions or whatever, just speak up. You can go off mute. I think there's enough of us here that know how to be quiet when we need to be quiet and to mute when we need to mute, that you all don't have to be on mute all the time, because then I have to tell you to unmute. So, okay, let's see. Share, share, share. Let me do this first. Here. Okay. Can everybody see this? Can you see the screen? Okay. Thank you. Cool. Whoops. That's what happens when you double click. Who would like to be, let me get back to my gallery. Who can help me out with being an admitter, a co-host to admit people if I forget to admit them?
I can help.
Thanks, Carla.
Yeah.
Okay, and I don't think Namit is here, but happy Diwali to anybody. The Festival of Lights. So it's a 5-day event starting today. And it's like Christmas, kind of. So there's gift giving and lots of celebrations and fun stuff. Okay, so here we are once again. Welcome everybody back to Tech Track. This is the annual review. I'm going to Sandy has to leave. She's got a commitment at 3, and I want to make sure that we leave time enough to talk about everything budget, anything new that we're doing with respect to finance. So the agenda, I may have shifted it around a little bit, but the agenda should be basically what we had talked about before. And so I'm going to be moving some of the stuff I was going to talk about with the program. I'm going to move it a little bit later after we talk about the budget stuff. Okay, so this is just a quick heads up. These are the numbers. And by the way, especially if you see numbers, this is what we're going to be sharing with FinCom, and this is what the Finance Committee, and this is what we'll be sharing with the leadership team. next weekend. Okay, so if we go by, I just noticed virtual instead of virtual, but okay. If we, based on everything that's been forecasted, this is where we think we're going to end up at the end of the year, which is about 40,000, 50 some thousand, 40 to 50,000 on the plus overall for 2025. And that's if expenses end up where we thought they were going to end up. And so, as you can see, some camps lost a little bit of money. Some camps look like they're going to be able to put a little bit of money away. And this is not money that it's going to come out of whatever reserves you have. So that's probably the easiest way to explain it. We had about 28 campers drop out of all camps, and that's, 2 to 3%. So it's not maybe 3 to 4%. It's not super significant, but something that we need to keep an eye on. I think about half of those, not quite half, got sick at some point for whatever reason. We went down from, we had a couple branches that did not participate last year for whatever reason. We're going to have fewer branches this year, just so everybody knows. We do have a couple of branches. Novato will not be working, and they've already been working with other local branches, and Delta Contra Costa will be combining, we think, with Concord, and then the Citrus Heights American River branch will be combining or basically merging with Sacramento. So we'll have a few less branches next year. Any questions about this chart? Oops. That's what happens when you raise your hand. By the way, if anybody raises their hand, it will probably tag you to raise your hand. Whoops. Okay, so let's talk. I'm going to have Sandy talk a little bit about the preliminary budget review and what's going on there. Okay, Sandy, you're up.
Okay, so basically we wanted to kind of get a feel for what the break-even point would be and how much reserves we would need next year. So forecasting based on 2025 to 2026 with some minor tweaks from some of you, we end up with needing about $40,000 in reserves next year, which is fine because we have them and we didn't spend $50,000 in 2025. So we have that available for 2026. So I don't think we'll have any issue getting approval for that so that we can move forward with our advertising our fees for next year.
Right.
Jerry?
Yeah. And so this is going to hold everything steady, as you can see here.
Yeah. So we still have plenty of reserves. Those are all unrestricted reserves. The not dedicated to a branch. So we'll fine tune this like next March, April, when we're ready for our final budget. So you'll spend more time on it then, but this is our first pass.
It's a preliminary. It can move. It will move between now and next spring when we get the final budget approved. It will probably be kind of the March timeframe. Hopefully, we'll have good contract numbers by then from all of our vendors. But this is, all of our campuses. This is just where we're at today and what we're going to ask the board to sign off on. Any questions about this? I think you shouldn't have any because you should have all been working together. And that's what I understood. Everybody was working together to take care of this. Somebody else raised their hand beside me.
Me.
Thank you, me.
So I heard from Sue that we are not going to raise our rate. I didn't get the email for some reason that came out midweek about that. She said it'd be okay, even though I'm going to lose money. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. It's, if we approve it in advance, it is what it is. That's and that's what we're going to ask the board to do because we have enough. Now, you may not have been allocated sufficient to cover and to still have enough reserve left in case anything should happen. But the reality is we're not a year-round program. So reserves, the concept of reserves is kind of a weird concept for us. It's something that if you have to dip right now, where are you at? You've got 35,000 in reserve. You're going to end up having to dip into that $1,500. Not a big deal, Doreen, you know, when you think about whatever. And so this is what we're planning on going to the board to approve. And there might be some discussion on, well, why does it show a negative and why this, and this? But the reality is we don't want to charge the branches any more than we have to. And if we do have money in reserve, at some point, the fiduciaries are going to come and tell us to spend it down. Yeah, Cynthia.
Yeah, with regard to that, I also think there is an issue. Hopper has quite a bit of reserves. But there are two things about what was put in for Hopper that I'm still having a little problem with. Having us with 84 campers, that's what we had last year. But that we had talked about 80 last year and we went up to 84. I think with some branches falling out, really 80 is a better number. And to get to the bottom line for Hopper, there's a large assumption about how much extra money we're going to get in donations that I don't think is going to come through. So while our bottom line looks really positive, I don't think it's going to be that positive.
Okay.
That's fine. You've got plenty of reserves. So
Yes, we do. And I don't expect this to be negative, but I just don't expect this to be that positive.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to know. Anything else about this that we need to discuss, Sandy, or to like point out?
I think it's all pretty straightforward at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't envision that we're going to have any pushback from anybody. And as we said, the budget recommendation, the motion will be for the branch to approve the budget as indicated based on keeping the camp fees stable from last year. And that's the recommendation we're going to make to the board. We do have a little bit, we're going to have some additional program expenses between now and the end of the year. We're working on some character development training, which basically is using the Speech Trek funds to help us develop some training for alums so that they can work on some of their skills that they need to work on, speaking up, etc. And then we are also, Namita and Carla, the TTAS team, are helping us with figuring out what we're going to do for a database for tracking alums, basically. We think we are going to long-term add volunteer tracking to that too, so that we can give some recognition to our volunteers who are helping us out every year, which is sometimes a difficult thing to keep our finger on the pulse of. We've been having discussions over the last couple of weeks on this, and we think we're pretty close to a solution. It's not real expensive, but it's probably going to be a couple $1,000s a year, and we will be bringing some local, probably some alums in to help us with some of the admin type stuff. Hi, Peggy. So hopefully, you know, and by the way, these slides will all be available. I'll send them to you afterwards and we can share them with other people. I'm not sure how valuable the slide piece of it is, but the video piece, but we will definitely have the audio for you to listen to. Okay, so if we look at the program from 2026, so what's new? What's coming up? And Sandy, I have a little bit later in here, I've included the link to your video, and I know you're going to end up having to leave, but if you want to share that video, one of the videos, and we can go over with people here once I get through the slide, that would be a good time if you want to do that.
No, just say when you're ready.
Okay. So we're going to add a place where staff can, right now they can decline stipends. We're going to let them decline expenses too. So it's less questions that you have to go back and ask them. Do you want to decline it? all program expenses are going to use this expense reimbursement form. Obviously, there's always going to be a backdoor to anything, but we're going to push that we're going to use this expense form. It enables us to track things a little bit more accurately, probably. Stipends. So the W-9 moving forward only required for stipends greater than $2,000 total in the year. Okay, so for people who work 3 or 4 camps, they could hit this pretty easy if they're an instructor. But we have probably less than a handful of people who fall into this category that we would have to worry about having a stipend for that. Camp directors, obviously, if you're not splitting a stipend with somebody, you would have to take care of this. So we would need your W-9 also, but this is a good thing for us to be able to not have to worry about so much moving on. It is going to require you to make sure that they give you an accurate address, and this is more relevant for the alums who are in college, right? Because they forget and they give you their parents' address or they give you their school address or something, and then they don't get the check. So let's just be sure about that. We are going to set some workshop stipend ranges. We got some feedback on workshops, and we're going to we'll put that into the policies and procedures. If you've got specific questions about that, ask Sandy. And we're finalizing what those are. Right now, it's pretty basic. If you've got exceptions, all you got to do is get it approved ahead of time. That's all. And so it's not going to be that restrictive. In Camp Doc, so we are going to require MMR uploads. I know camp directors hate this because it's just one more paper that you're going to have to make sure that they have. But these are probably more relevant and have been than COVID. And oh, by the way, they're also easier for them to get because they have to do it for school. So this is something that should not be as challenging because we need to make sure that we have that. So for people who are adults, we're going to ask them to enter the date so that we can capture it, but it's not going to be as critical. This year, we are in Camp Doc, we are going to have more control over the form content. And I know that Linda has been asking some of you for feedback on what you think we should be changing. And we will continue to work on that, probably have some kind of a group meeting for people interested in early November. So the alum program. So we've got this TTAP microfunding project that's underway. We've already had a couple of requests come in, and we're working through all of that information. And as you know, we can have, Carla will share a little bit more with us as we move forward. This thing is in my way. But it's really to support everything. It's to support mostly local to get them started. And then any programs that we think we need to implement virtually across the state that's going to drive alumni engagement. And that is, and we're going to be putting this new database in 2026. That's going to be something that we need to focus on. Like I said, we're evaluating vendors right now. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of this. Some of this is more relevant to branch coordinators than it is to you. But a lot of these slides I'm also going to be sharing with branch coordinators on Thursday night. So basically what it's saying is, and we'll talk a little bit more about this when we get into the DEI section, but volunteer conduct agreement, everybody who volunteers, who interacts with kids has to do this. Everybody. This is not something that you can say, well, I only evaluate applications. Oh no, especially then you better do it or make sure that somebody's doing it, okay? So, and we are gonna probably have to implement some type of compliance reporting to the state. So we will let them know how many people are, in fact, in each branch are participating and are signing up for their VCA. We'll be getting the branch request form out, and that's why it's important to have the dates as kind of as soon as we can lock. And last year we put out, it could be this or it could be this, and we can still do that. It's just that that does impact when branches decide who they're going to send where, and based on those dates. So the MOUs are going to be going out in early January, and they'll be due back about Valentine's Day. And then just like last year, the Camp application portal is going to be live for both staff and campers or applicants in late January. Schedule, this is what I have so far. Based on what, and Hopper, I just put you down for 5/11. I saw your note. They're not even having conversations yet, but.
Right, that's fine.
Okay. If somebody wants these dates changed, let me know and I'll change. But until we hear differently, this is what we will be communicating to the branches when the time is right with the request agreement. And obviously, the virtual camp can float. It'll probably be the last camp in the run so that we could pick up anybody else who maybe wasn't able to make it. Okay, Becca, I'm going to stop sharing and let you share. And you probably on mute, Becca.
Yeah, just opening up my things.
Okay. Is it hot there today?
No.
Really nice. It was warm this morning for sure.
It's been unseasonably cool, which has been fantastic.
Thanks, Roberta. Roberta says Form 1099 payments of 2,000 or more. So 1,999 would not count.
Oh God, that's not what I want.
Did anybody not get your brownies?
Yummy.
Does anybody have any left? Just curious.
I have lots left.
By the way, they freeze nice.
And they go great with red wine.
Do they?
Oh, yes.
All
I'm
right.
saving them, but thank you.
Okay, so if you were here last year, this is going to be very similar as to what I did last year. If you weren't here last year, I'm just going to briefly go over the results of the two surveys that we do. This is the national survey, which is perhaps the pre and post survey, which has a lot of questions. And then there's the camp experience survey, which is both campers and staff. So this one right now is the national survey. So the questions in the pre and post survey are repeated for the most part. The campers were sent a link before camp, but this year we really tried to make sure that everybody answered it. And then most camps, as far as I understand, do the post-camp survey on Friday night. Perhaps one or two, based on responses, don't do it then. And we will talk about that a little bit later. That's a bug.
What's
Sorry.
a bug?
My dog is
interested
in things outside. So the data is matched and unmatched. We do ask them to input an ID. They input it incorrectly, so it's very unhelpful. But you can end up matching for the most part on first and last name. Now, some of them are like, I'm putting Jane Doe or I'm making up a name. So there's some issues with matching, but for the most part, the data I'm going to go over is unmatched. We're just looking at total observations pre and post. And There's some qualitative data in there. So if you're interested in the comments that your campers have to say, you'll need to take a look at that data. This is really focused on the quantitative changes that we can kind of measure. Okay, so first thing we can measure is race. This though is somewhat misleading. So they could choose more than one option. They could choose as many options as they wanted to, in fact, as well as multiracial was an option. So when I went through this, if they selected more than one race, which wasn't Asian and then any combination of East Asian or South Asian, that just became Asian. But anything else, if they selected more than one or selected multiracial, that became multiracial. So compared to last year, multiracial is much higher. But other than that, all of these graphs look really similar. Now, this is a pre-camp survey, so there is a potential for slight bias there as to who is actually showing up to camp if we think that a certain race was more likely to be enrolled in camp and take the pre-survey and not come last minute. And the only reason I bring this up is because I do know anecdotally a number of campers that were concerned about ICE or whatever, and that was primarily Hispanic or Latina campers that would fill out the survey but maybe did not end up coming to camp. Not that that is a big deal. I'm just trained in making sure that everyone understands issues with data.
And just FYI, we did get a little feedback, not a lot, that probably a handful or less of campers may have not shown up because of fear.
Yes, and that's the only reason I pointed that out because I had heard that as well. So
yeah.
If you are interested in what your particular camp looked like, these are counts, not so the colors are percentages within a single camp. The breakdown you can see here. I know the colors are a little bit hard to differentiate between like the blue and the teal, but we do see kind of based on where camps are, we do see changes in demographics. Now, one big thing to point out here, and I thought must be later. Virtual obviously has a lot fewer responses, so you're going to see probably some bias there. But a lot of this, I don't have a whole lot of insight into it. It's more, I assume each camp will be looking at their graph and going like, that's interesting, or maybe we should change this. This information I think would be really good to go to the branches. Not that, we have any mandate about what races we want to be sending to camp, but it is pretty diverse. Which is, always a great thing. So
yeah, that is good. Do we know how different it was from last year, Becca? Do you remember?
I didn't. I just eyeballed the graphs,
Right.
mainly this one, and except for the multiracial, because I did not like when the data that I got, I think somebody had already gone through
I
and
did
messed
go
with
through.
race.
Yes.
You did that this year, but then I deleted that and did it myself. So
Okay.
I don't know what the methodology was for creating the race last year in terms of multiracial, but everything else, every other bar, the other difference is that this year there was an added option which nobody actually chose. Or maybe it was added last year. But
I prefer not to.
No, it was Arab or something like that. But anyways, the bars were eyeballing it were essentially the same, so I didn't feel like it was worth it to do a year comparison for race.
Okay. I did, as I was going through it, though, I will say that I noticed a whole lot more multiracial this year.
Oh yeah. The previously the multiracial, which is the blue, was about half of the Hispanic last year. And here it's higher than that. And so that we have no way to kind of tease that apart, which is fine. And just from reading about this, I know that younger people are a lot more likely than previous generations to choose multiracial, even if a previous generation was multiracial. So, we always have issues with self-reporting and how people see themselves, but the way that we ask about race or national does is in line with the way that,
Yeah.
the best practices. So that is what it is.
So it's interesting that I find, I think this is good stuff to share with our branch coordinators to let them know that they're doing a better job of picking diverse candidates.
Yeah, and it may take me a week. I will upload these images. I will also upload some of the other results by camp. We will see kind of aggregated, but I will upload them by camp if you're interested in being able to share those with your branches for whatever reason. All right, so here's some of the response rate that we see. They're pretty good. Some things that stood out. Virtual has a pretty low response rate, about half their total campers, and then Whittier, their post survey results are really low, which is going to skew some of their answers. I don't know, if it was emailed out to them after camp or what.
Oh,
So
they had an issue with the first day. Becca, I think it was, they started working on it on Thursday night, I think. Then correct me if I'm wrong, Joni. And they had not turned off the repeat button yet.
Oh yeah. So yeah, and I know that's a fact because we ran into the problem. For future reference, open it in an incognito browser and you're good to go. If that's an issue. So some of these responses, Santa Cruz is also somewhat low in the post. It's gonna skew things, but things are already skewed in terms of this question anyways. So it's not a big deal. But I think because of that, last year we had a lot of statistical significance, if you care about that. This year there's less of it, and some of it is due to sample sizes and whatnot.
And you're saying statistical, like the lift, the before and after changes in less significant this year. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you look at that last column, there's less stars than last year, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's just the preciseness of the estimator, if you will. But you can see over on the left, we want the green line to be higher than the red line. This is a measure of how much does being nominated to Tech Trek mean to you, and they can choose a number between 0 and 100. Some of them took this as an opportunity to write a sentence, which is not useful. Sometimes they gave us a range. It means about 80 to 90 to me, and I'm like, come on, people. So if they did that, I averaged it, which means we're losing some precision there. But overall, and I do compare this between last year and this year, you see that after camp, people thinks it's more important to them.
Now talk about this bottom of the distribution. I'm just looking at your thing there.
Yeah, the bottom of the distribution, when we look at it compared to the previous couple of years, it's kind of less. It stands out less. There could be any number of reasons for those, because you'll notice that the blue lines are actually lower than the red lines at like the lower impact. People could type wrong. It's very easy when they're hitting numbers on a Chromebook. They could be compressing their numbers on the pre-survey. They may have really no idea what Tech Trek is about, and just pick a number to answer. They may think that that's going to impact their selection at camp or whatever. I just think that it's interesting. This would be something that would be a lot more useful for individual camps to kind of look at when there were low numbers and see if there are responses based to their other questions where you can kind of tease out like, oh, their core class didn't match up well to them, or they had a roommate issue. So I say it's interesting. There's not much that we can really say conclusively about it, but it I think would be worthwhile to be like, oh, we had a camper that went down by 50 points. Why? And trying to figure out, was that because they had a terrible experience? Does it seem like it was probably a typo? Things like that.
Okay.
Any questions about this? Okay, so on to some Likert style questions, where they are asked a variety of questions and then given a scale. Sometimes there are three options like strongly agree, don't agree or disagree, strongly disagree would be an example, or agree, neither, and disagree. Sometimes they're given 5 options, sometimes they're given 4 options. And these questions are kind of looking at skills in STEM, I guess you would say, and seeing if there's a change between what their answer is before and after camp. And so they can't see their previous response. They may forget, oh, I put, slightly agree, and now I put slightly agree again. They can't be like, we don't specifically ask, like, how do you feel that this changed at camp? We just feel, it does say after camp, but it doesn't say like, they aren't asked how much it changed. It's just they're asked to answer the same question again. So I tried to calculate the change in answers. This is heavily estimated. It's pretty easy when there's 3 choices, but as there get to be 4 or more, I have to combine choices. And so it's not scientific by any stretch of the imagination. You have got increasing uncertainty when there's a really big difference in the number of respondents between pre and post surveys, because you don't know who you're capturing, and saying that is therefore a change is not really right. So a high percentage change, a high percentage positive change could mean 2 things. It could mean that they change their opinion, or it could just mean because I kind of throw out the campers that are already at the highest tier. It could just mean that you had a ton of people already really confident in this, and the ones that weren't confident changed, which we would still, measure as a positive change as well. A negative or 0 change doesn't necessarily mean that they feel less confident in their skills. It could be due to sample size. It could be due to a number of other things. So the graph on the left shows the percent respondents that they responded. You've got two lines. Can you guys see my mouse?
Yeah, are these before or after?
These are both. So the left-hand line is the pre-survey. Oops. Yep. And the right-hand line is the post-survey. So ideally what you want to see is this orange section growing. Oh, okay. And that means that more people are saying, I feel I can solve problems alone above average on that. And whether the blue section is shrinking or the green section is shrinking, it's still shrinking. But ideally you want to see the blue one shrink a lot. And but again, there's very few people even saying that. So a 1 camper change in the below average is going to look pretty high. Now over here is me estimating the change. How many of them, so all of these here, I feel I can solve problems alone. All of these show a positive increase.
This is just the delta here.
Yeah, whereas this one that's below the line, that would be a slight decrease. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean there was a decrease. You could be capturing different campers in the pre and post survey. Right. Because, you added campers late, so they didn't take the pre-survey, or they just never took it because they didn't check their email, or, whatever that is.
Well, and again, when you have with Likert, when you have stuff that's so superlative that generally is so high, it's really hard to see a difference.
Yeah. So, right, especially down here, I feel I can solve problems with others. These orange sections are so large that you're not going to see a lot of change, regardless of even if they are, because we're getting capped at the top. And again, I will post these images. If you want to really look at yours, I can also do them based on the camp.
Thanks, Becca.
Yeah. And I didn't think it was too useful to compare across years, just because there's a lot of information here. I couldn't think of a really good way to compare between this year and last year. Some of the stuff I did, but I don't think there's nothing that really stood out to me, right? In
Yeah,
general,
I
we're
can't
seeing,
imagine that there would be
and
much
what
difference.
you would really be concerned about is if there's really big negatives in the change, and we're really just not seeing that. Um,
Or if I saw, last year we were getting, the average was 95%. Now we went down to 89.
Yeah.
That would be something I would say, okay, we maybe need to take a look at what's going on.
Yeah, so the big takeaway for these would be like here, this stands out, and I have no idea why, right? It could be a coding issue. It could, which probably not, but it could be, a specific a specific class is saying, "Oh, well, my hard work in my class didn't pay off, so now I'm going to say," and this could be a change from strongly agreed to or definitely could to probably could, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Mm.
Right? That's not like a hugely negative thing. So, yeah, I'm just gonna kind of keep going through this. I don't know that there's a whole lot of really great information to be teased out of this.
I mean, the only thing I can see there is looking at, okay, Santa Cruz, what you do that enable that most to respond better to handling unexpected events.
Well, the thing that they had the lowest to begin with.
Mm.
And so, right, if you've got the lowest to begin with,
Got it.
and all camps are kind of doing
Got
this in a similar way, theirs is going to show the most growth, even though it may not, the impact may be exactly the same. That's why it's really hard to get quantitative measures of this. I did, the best that I could.
Yeah.
So here is where I look at the impact,
Cool.
the difference in the impact pre and post across 3 years.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah, and last year, for whatever reason, it was really noticeable that there was a change. For whatever reason, this year's looks similar to 2023's.
Was the data size bigger or smaller last year? I remember we had issues with collecting data last year.
I don't remember that. I could look at it, but I didn't think to, because I didn't write down the observations on this slide last year. So, but in general, right, this also has to do with, it could be that branches are doing a better job of getting girls excited for camp. When we had COVID, the kind of pipeline of, oh yeah, my friend's older sister went to camp and told me about it and was really, really excited about it, that broke down during COVID. And I think we're starting to capture that again, which means we're going to have higher pre-answers than we did, especially in 2024. So the higher the pre-camp measure gets, the higher the pre-camp average gets, the less change we'll be able to measure.
Right.
It might be worthwhile to try and ask a different question from national of, how much on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you value your week at camp? In addition to this import question, because then we could capture some measure of those girls who are just like 100 and 100, which doesn't tell us much.
Right.
So this is just the pre-camps across the years. You can see that this year, this is what I was saying, this year is much higher. So it could be that the branches are doing a better job of talking about it. It could be that they're hearing from their teachers more after that COVID break, which does mean that then we're going to kind of see less of a change. But again, last year was higher than this year for whatever reason. I don't think it was because camps were significantly different or anything like that.
Well, and I guess my thinking and how many more slides do you have to go through? Because I want to talk.
This is it for this. Then I have the camp experience.
Okay, let's just stop and talk for a second.
Sure.
So, is there something else that we would recommend in terms of, once we get so close that it's very difficult to discern if we're getting lift, why bother asking, right? Before and after. But if we were going to ask, are there other questions or other things that we think we can focus on that will enable us to see lift between pre and post?
I mean, the biggest problem is that we actually don't care what they think about the camp experience. What we care about is how it affects their later outcomes, right?
Right. Right.
And you
And
know,
so
it
how
may
would you
be
capture
right.
that?
I think about it from a sports, you know, standpoint. How much import do you have on that Hell Week where we just did 2-a-days? Well, I hated it. It was terrible. But how much does it pay off for later in the season? Well, a lot. And it's not that extreme, but it's a similar thing. Where especially if you're trying to teach problem solving and teach you know, you're doing projects that are challenging to them, and they're like, oh, that was hard, you know, maybe you're going to get an immediately lower answer, but that's not actually how we would measure the success of camp.
Mm-mm. Yeah. Yeah, asking them, was it fun? That's not a very valuable answer, right? It's like, Cynthia, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the questions are tough to get at really what impact is. I don't think asking them if it's fun really helps that much. You can kind of gauge that while the kids are there with you. Um, Maybe more questions along the lines of if somebody else that you knew was given the opportunity to come to camp, would you strongly encourage them,
Mhm.
not encourage them? Maybe would get at it a different way.
Yeah, it
Um,
is a that question might be good to add to the camp experience. But again, you're measuring it right after camp, where a lot of their feelings about it are going to be like, I had a lot of fun,
Elevated.
and they're not going to be like, oh, when I took my high school chemistry class, right, I figured out that, oh, I learned these skills at camp that really helped me. So
I think it's also hard because we tend, at least my camp tends to bring out a lot of girls who are already achieving fairly well.
yeah,
They don't always want to admit, even in a confidential survey, that they have a confidence problem
it's
or
also not a confidential survey. They
well,
they put
true,
their
right,
they put their name, the national asks for names and everything.
right.
So yeah.
Yeah,
So
I've had
they don't.
discussions with them about this, by the way. So,
Yeah, so the girls don't really want to admit that.
Right.
That's not something you want to go around saying. Um, and in the interviewing, because I'm also the branch coordinator, when we do the interviewing, there's one question we always ask, which is, do you think boys are better than girls at science and math and engineering things? And the girls pretty uniformly answer, oh no, we're all the same. Well, when you do some follow-up questions about, well, we've noticed that when you get to high school calculus, there's a lot more boys than girls in the class. Why do you think that might be? And you get very different answers then. Then they'll talk to you about, oh, well, it could be interests, or it could be because that's a really hard class, or because those are the people who want to go into engineering, and maybe that's not for me. And it's 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 a more subtle problem than just, do you think boys are better at it?
Yeah. Sorry, I lied. I did have one more slide that I threw in this morning. It just has to do with the issue of using match data.
yeah.
So I did, as I mentioned, go through, and I could not match on, it asks for their ID, but it says your dorm number, your breakout number, your camper ID, and they're like the responses were entertaining. So I matched on first and last name, which drops off significantly for some of the camps. For some of them, it's really good, but even for some that have really high pre and post, they don't match because of changes in campers when they take the survey. And I just calculated the change between the pre and the post survey, and this is a histogram, and you see some of those weird numbers down here that you could maybe try and tease out, like, why is there a minus 80 here? You know, but almost everybody is at 0, no change.
but still 575 matched records is a significant number of matched records.
Yeah, I mean it's
If
definitely
you were to
driven by
want
some.
to, and I think it's only really relevant at a more local level. And even then, I don't think, I mean, knowing that Susie Q said before I want to do this and after I want to do this, and therefore, you know their intent.
Yeah. That
I
that
think,
could definitely be useful at a qualitative level, looking
yeah,
at what their comments were, what
yeah,
they, and there's some, if you're interested in knowing about that, there are some questions that they ask. I was just kind of looking at it in terms of the trying to measure it qualitatively, and right, what we already knew, almost all of them are not changing, which just kind of goes in line with some of the assumptions I made. So
yeah, yeah. And I think in general, they're, again, we do very well at these. We are a high quality program. I think any of us will step up. Everybody, we can always improve somewhere, I'm sure, but I think the areas that we really need to focus on right now is more what's happening at our local level and how are we going to make sure that we engage our campers to the degree that we are hoping that they'll be engaged. That is, that they'll continue on in college, high school and college, to focus on STEM. Cool.
so this is the second survey, which is just given out by us after the fact. It's emailed out, so the responses are pretty low, but it's asked of campers and staff. And here's the breakdown in responses. The left-hand one, I forgot to label these. This is campers and this is staff. Just if you're kind of curious what the numbers are. Pretty low response rate. For staff, it's pretty variable, and for the campers, it's about 50% kind of on average. So
That's better than the average in terms of.
yeah, it's not a bad response rate. It does mean, especially when you're looking at staff response rates, when it's really low, like Santa Clara and Santa Cruz, that you could have one person skewing it a lot.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is really what's going on.
No.
But if you're curious about like, that result is really strange, the response rates can explain some of it sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm thinking particularly a couple years ago, some of the
Yeah.
things. So here, they could strongly agree, strongly disagree, slightly disagree, or have no opinion. So I threw the no opinions out. The strong feelings are over here. If it's a positive, that is strongly agree. If it's a negative, that is strongly disagree. And over here, same thing for slight. The positive is slightly agree, negative is slightly disagree. So this is kind of measuring a lot of times how campers felt about camp. This one's pretty easy to interpret. There's no subtraction, there's no changing. So if you see a big negative bar, it's like maybe we should think about how we're approaching that. But again, even if it's a big negative bar, these numbers are really small. Over here, this is like 5-10% max. Because most of them are up here. So, and again, I figure people are kind of just looking at their own individual camps. I don't have a whole lot to say about this. So just scroll through. People can look, and if anybody wants to discuss anything, I'm happy to slow down.
Did you do a bar that has all the camps together? No.
Yeah, because I compare years. So yes, I do
Okay,
have
cool.
some that have all the camps
Fine.
together.
That's fine. We'll look at it in a minute. More confident, safe.
So all of these so
Oh.
far have
I'm looking at, I had too much work to do and go, what? Oh, yeah, okay. I get
that
it.
one, if they disagree, that's great because they
Right.
didn't have too much work to do, which is, I don't think they should. All of the ones so far have been asked of campers and frequently of staff as well. So this is kind of a combined
Okay.
result.
Oh, okay. I got enough sleep. I love that. And whose fault was that? Okay.
Some of these questions are not worded great. So
Yeah.
we would like to interpret I would tell an adult about bullying as like I you know how to who to talk to, but it could mean like I just wouldn't do that because I wouldn't ever tell an adult that, period. Or it could mean I wouldn't know who at camp to tell about it, or they could just think, it's not really that. Now the second one is a staff question, and that would be a training, but it could also be if they're a counselor and they saw bullying, they may not feel like that's their place. So some of these, it's a little bit hard to interpret what part of the question they might be answering.
Can you,
There's a question that the days were long, but it was worth it. And if they strongly disagree with that, they could be strongly disagreeing that the days were long or the days were hard.
Yeah.
I think it's the days were hard. Like, no, I thought the days were really easy, so I strongly
Yeah.
disagree. Or they could be disagreeing with the, but it was worth it.
You're right.
So it's
That's
hard-
confounding.
it's hard
Confounding.
to tell.
So if you give me suggestions for how to modify these to make it a little bit more clear, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I never remember till I'm analyzing and I'm like, oh yeah.
Okay. Remember this time, Becca, please.
I'll try. This is actually, I know a couple years ago, these were all over the place. So this is where we're showing a really good improvement that, and again, this was from campers and staff that thought that we're getting, clearer with the rules.
Mhm.
And, this one is hit or miss. Do they need to know the rules before camp? But this one I think is really good that there's not a lot of negative meaning.
I would think that we would see more stuff from staff about camp rules being shared before.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But we ask campers as well.
Something.
This is the campers' perception of staff, as well as staff's perception of themselves.
Is it a lot different or no?
So again, it's a lot different than 2 years ago, but not a lot different than last year.
Okay.
Here's where you start to see some things that maybe as directors we can start to improve.
Okay.
Because this is less how camp is run and this is more how we're talking to our staff. So, and again, with the this is why I brought up the response rates, because this could be one person, right? This entire bar could just be one person who, didn't.
Yeah, we had an issue that, I mean, we worked it through, but yeah, I know what that probably is.
You can usually find it real easy when you go, oh, I know who that was.
From personal experience, a couple years ago, somebody responded, "All strongly disagree," and I looked at the line, and based on their feedback, I'm like, "Yeah, you're the counselor who thought that you just signed up to be a camper again."
Exactly.
And
wasn't digging in, wasn't doing, and had to get talked to a few times. Yep.
Yeah. So, don't take this as necessarily, we did something wrong.
Don't take it super personally.
It's just, I think, a tool for examining what was going on here.
Yeah.
And then the sufficiently trained is one that is another good one to look at. Sufficient breaks and sufficiently trained, I think, are good ones to take a look at, because these are purely staff responses. So here are some comparison for some places for 1 year, some places for 2 years, some places for 3 years.
Got it.
Where this, I think you're not going to see a whole lot of change. If you do see a whole lot of change, this is where you could think, what did we do differently? And again, I will upload these to Drive so that people can look at them for a little bit longer.
So can you at some point go through and look at the 23 data for Santa Barbara?
So I thought about it, but it felt like it would be comparing apples and oranges because the staff, everybody was different.
True.
And so remembering what I did of that 23 data, I didn't think it would be very insightful.
Okay, good.
I certainly could,
No,
but I
I
don't
wouldn't
know.
worry about
Yeah.
unless the camp wants to see
Yeah,
it.
and if you would like me to do something with your data, send me an email. It's pretty
Yeah.
easy. It's just all in scripts. It's not like I have to type in a bunch of things. I just click and click and click. And so here it's purely strongly or slightly agree and strongly or slightly disagree.
No. So I want to look at this for a second. I had too much work.
That's where you want kind of a.
Becca, yours went the right direction there. Yay.
No, I don't want to give them too much work.
I know, but I'm saying it became less from 2023. You had more that we're saying.
No, so this
Oh,
is
no,
I just
negative. You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
and some
bummer.
of that is
Bummer.
I mean
Right.
that question your mileage will vary, right?
Yeah.
I recall in 2023 and previous years, Santa Barbara's was way up here because they had, their projects that they had to work on. And
Right.
so on top of which, right, oh, we made you, work on a skit. You thought that was work, right? Is it really work? So, again, your interpretation of this varies. I think when we should be concerned is when things are changing wildly
Yeah.
from year to year.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And there's just a couple more, but again, nothing really stands out, which is kind of what you're looking for.
Uh-huh. No, I'm not looking for things to stand out. It's
Well,
like,
that's where you would be looking
Yeah,
to
right.
correct things,
I
I
want
guess.
it all to be very boring,
Yes.
actually, to say this is where it needs to be.
Yeah.
And National would never say, oh, we should stop doing this anymore. We should stop tracking it, because I think then you start losing attention to the details if you do stop doing it. But some of these are very long. I wish we could shorten it up even more.
Yeah, I was thinking about this. How do we get a better response rate for this camp atmosphere? Turning it
Yeah.
into an in-camp survey wouldn't be too bad if instead of making it 5 responses, which is strongly, slightly, and not for agree and disagree, just make it a yes or no, right? You're losing a little bit of emphasis,
Nuance.
but you're seeing so much of strongly agree anyways that I don't feel like it would be worthwhile. And I feel like it would make the survey a lot faster.
And we do want it just indicative, really.
You could even then do it on paper and have your counselors input it. That would not be terribly difficult, I think. So, something to think about.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that for next year.
Yeah, but again, nothing is standing out. Here we start to see a little bit difference.
What's going on with Sonoma there?
On which one?
Well, I'm just
sufficiently trained from last year.
Yeah, for last year, right? For 2024. But that means they made a big improvement, right?
Yeah. So here, right, if you're seeing differences in things like sufficiently trained, sufficient breaks, these you can imagine would perhaps change year to year if you have a change in
personnel
directors or a big change in personnel, right? If you had a bunch of people returning and then they didn't return.
A bunch of new people.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Grain of salt.
Ours are funny because last year we didn't give them breaks and this year we did, and they rated breaks only slightly higher. So yeah, and it was all different people. So you can't compare one year to the other.
Right.
Yeah.
I think didn't you have the same problem in San Diego with the breaks that people felt there was too much break this year? I think they felt like
I think they did because I was giving them time for getting to places because some things were on opposite ends of campus?
This is purely these questions are purely staff. So this would not be campers thinking that they had too much downtime. This is what I think it's trying to capture is like, did a dorm mom feel like she was working from 6 to 11 or were there breaks?
And that sometimes can also vary based on the age skew of your
Yes,
dorm
no,
room.
absolutely. Yeah. So it's worthwhile and I didn't trying to break down these responses based on job because they are asked job, but the responses are so low that would be really trying to tease out too much minutia. But again, if you're concerned about something, looking at, and maybe all your counselors said they didn't get enough sleep, but all your dorm moms said they did, right? Maybe that would be something to take a look at. So,
or you have 75% new personnel this year.
yes.
So, they may be thinking something different.
Well, I think my staff skewed younger this year because we used a lot of people who applied to be lead counselors or lead peer counselors that we ended up making dorm monitors because we didn't have enough dorm people sign up.
Yeah.
So I had a very young, in like mid-20s
right.
Staff mostly.
Well, and interestingly, so I'm looking at the San Diego in particular. I think probably the biggest kvetch that when I was looking through some of the stuff from them was from the peer counselors saying that they weren't sufficiently trained, not the DMs and not the lead counselors, but it was the peer counselors. So I don't
probably true.
I think that might be something, and we can talk a little bit about that if somebody's got a good process that they use with peer counselors, either pre-camp and then at camp, that we could share more broadly with between camps. That would be great. What else we got, Becca?
That's it. So again, if you are interested in knowing something and don't feel comfortable playing with data, send me an email and I'm happy to do that. Help you out with that, give you some pretty pictures if you want to show them to your branches or, whatever.
Cool. Thanks, Becca. That was helpful. All right, let's go back. So discussions about the survey. Let me drop this for a second. I'm going to drop the share for a second. If anybody is interested in getting connected and wants to participate in helping figure out what we put in these surveys, because Namita is going to help too, because I've asked her to help out. I want to do some research and she's going to help me figure out what information we can collect that will actually prove valuable down the road, that we probably should have been collecting 20 years ago, but before anybody had emails. So it's, it makes it an interesting landscape to work in. Anybody want to talk about that survey data or things you might be planning on doing with it? And like she said, she'll share all that data.
I just want to say, oops, I guess I should be on the video.
You don't have to be.
I just wanted to say at Sonoma, we worked really hard on getting the training situation fixed, and I can see that was helpful.
Yeah, I was going to say something, you took what you heard last year and you did something. So what did you did?
What did we did?
Yeah.
Lily, you want to say anything about that?
Sure, yeah. Jessica and Diane and I worked on outlining what our expectations truly were and more like real life examples that our staff would encounter at camp, and did a couple activities with them on the staff arrival day of going through a few scenarios, and having them work in small groups that included new staff members as well as experienced staff members. And that share sharing of knowledge and information, I think made people feel a lot more confident and like they had more people around them with that information if they did find themselves in a situation that they weren't expecting.
That's cool.
And I think we also worked a little bit more during the staff meetings to get some of that taken care of too.
Yeah.
Do you have a copy of the scenarios or the role play things or whatever it is that you did? Here's this issue. How would you deal with this kind of a thing? Did you like write those down or record them somewhere?
I think we might have some documentation.
Yeah, I think we do. Yeah.
That'd be cool. That'd be cool for people. Okay. What time do we have? Where am I supposed to be right now? Let's see. Let me look at my slide deck. Here we go. So we should be 3:20. We're cranking here, peoples. So we could tentatively be done early here. Let's take a quick break. I have to go get something to drink. So let's take a quick break and we'll be right back, okay?
What do you call quick? 5 minutes?
Yeah, what time is it? 3:12. Be back 3:20.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. For those of you who, if you're still hanging around, you're welcome to chit chat. I'll be back shortly.